There are many thousands of islands around the world, each of which has its own unique geography, communities, and ecosystems. While a lot of them have been developed like other land masses, there are still plenty that remain as pristine as nature intended. From tropical paradises to stunning retreats, these are the 15 most beautiful islands on Earth. Number 15. St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Located at the southern end of the Eastern Caribbean Sea, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a 142 square mile island territory that's made up of the main island of St. Vincent, along with a chain of 32 smaller islands. Named after St. Vincent of Saragossa by Christopher Columbus when he had discovered the islands in 1498, the island was already inhabited by this time, and it would be a further 220 years before the French managed to colonize it. Despite such a varied history and a population of around 100,000 people, the volcanic islands remain covered in lush forest and are of course surrounded by stunning beaches. Often seen as one of the jewels of the Caribbean, St. Vincent remains fairly quiet in comparison to other nearby islands like St. Lucia and Barbados, and the relative difficulty in getting there in the first place makes it a favorite destination for people looking to get away from it all. Feeling almost as if it could be a South Pacific island, there's also a marine reserve that encompasses 5 uninhabited islands that has some of the most pristine waters on Earth. Number 14. Santorini, Greece. Santorini is the largest island in a small volcanic archipelago that's around 120 miles off the coast of Greece in the Aegean Sea. It's quite small, with an area of just 28 square miles and an estimated population of 15,000 people, but it's undoubtedly one of the most beautiful islands in the region. This is because of 2 reasons. The first is that as a volcanic island, it has an unusual structure. It was actually the site of what's believed to have been one of the most powerful eruptions in the past few thousand years. Referred to as the Minoan eruption, it was responsible for the collapse of the Minoan civilization on the nearby island of Crete and created the Santorini archipelago. The other thing that makes this island so special is the unusual architecture. Instead of having developed areas full of uninspiring buildings, Santorini's villages are made up of stone structures that are colored with volcanic ash. Add to this the wonderful cuisine and rich cultural heritage, and you're left with a wonderful island that really gives the sense that you've escaped from the stresses of the wider world. Number 13. Palawan, Philippines. Palawan is the largest island of the Palawan Archipelago. That's a province of the Philippines. It lies on the boundary between the South China Sea and the Sulu Sea, and it's often voted as one of the most beautiful islands in the world thanks to the low amount of development that's taken place there. Covering an area of just over 4,700 square miles, it's 264 miles long and virtually all of the land is taken up by a mountain range, the highest peak of which is Mount Mantalingajan, which reaches 6,800 feet above sea level. Surrounded by white sandy beaches that encircle a dense jungle that's full of wildlife, it's one of the most biodiverse places in the Philippines, and there's far more to see there than it appears at first. Palawan is also where you'll find the Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that contains a huge section of river that passes through the mountains. Boat tours regularly take tourists through to give them the opportunity to see some of the most pristine cave formations anywhere in the world, with large stalactites and stalagmites, as well as an 1,180-foot tall cave room and a series of underground waterfalls. Number 12. Seychelles. Found approximately 932 miles to the east of mainland Africa and the Indian Ocean, the Republic of Seychelles is a group of 115 islands with a population of just under 100,000 people, making it the smallest country in Africa. The islands were first discovered by European explorers in the 16th century, and because they were so remote, there were no signs of them ever having been inhabited. For several centuries, the British and French fought over control of the region, which has resulted in a unique blend of cultures on the islands, something that's become even more special since Seychelles declared independence in 1976 and welcomed further influences from China and India. The majority of the islands within the country's territory remain uninhabited, and a large number are designated as nature reserves. They are virtually all surrounded by stunning white beaches, many of which you can walk the full length of without seeing another person. Some of the rock formations are unlike anything you'll find anywhere else. The islands are so beautiful that the locals believe one region in particular, the Valley de Mai, is actually the true location of the Garden of Eden, and once you see it, it's hard to say otherwise. Number 11. Waiheke Island, New Zealand. Waiheke Island is the second largest island in the Hauraki Gulf, which is on the northern coast of New Zealand's North Island and is around 13 miles away from Auckland. Covering an area of 36 square miles, and with a population of just under 10,000 permanent residents, it has a number of scenic beaches and a surprisingly warm climate. An unusually large percentage of the population is made up of people who work in the creative arts, such as musicians and artists, and this has created a vibrant atmosphere on the island and means you're never far away from a public artwork or a live musical performance. There are 9 publicly accessible beaches and thousands of small huts that can be rented out by guests as an alternative to staying in a hotel. Not only are their visitors treated to spectacular vistas, but there's plenty more on offer on the island, including the 23 vineyards that produce most of New Zealand's best wines. With sunnier weather than on the mainland and even a small clothes-optional beach, it's perhaps no surprise that the island has become so popular, and it's the most densely populated place in New Zealand. This in no way takes away from its beauty, though, and with an annual wine festival and jazz festival, it's the place to be in New Zealand during the summer months. Number 10. Samoa. First settled on by the Lapita people around 3,500 years ago, Samoa is an island country in Polynesia that's made up of 4 main islands, along with several uninhabited ones. It's about halfway between Hawaii and New Zealand, and in total has a landmass of around 1,097 square miles, but 3/4 of the 202,000-strong population live on one island, Upolu, which means the others are sparsely populated and as close to island paradises as you'll find. The islands were formed by volcanic activity, which means the fertile land supports lush jungles, and the beaches are idyllic, often said to be the prettiest in the whole of the Pacific. While there hasn't been an eruption for more than 100 years, you can still see the remnants of the last event near Mount Matavanu, and there's more than 20 square miles of solidified lava fields. Samoa has an equatorial climate, so is a tropical paradise for much of the year, and as one of the oldest Polynesian cultures, it's one of the most welcoming islands in the world too. Visitors can expect to experience the traditional Fa'a Samoa, or the Samoan Way, which is the traditional worldview based on family and warm hospitality. Number 9. Isla Holbox, Mexico. The first thing that usually comes to mind when you think of islands in Mexico is Cancun, but while that definitely is where you'd want to go if you're in search of a party, there are several others more suited to peace and tranquility, and are actually far more beautiful. Isla Holbox is a 26-mile-long and 1-mile-wide island that's off the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's separated from the mainland by a 6-mile-wide shallow lagoon that's home to a large population of flamingos, pelicans, and a wide range of other bird life. Because of this and the animals that live on the island, it's part of the Yumbalam Biosphere Reserve, which means there are strict limits on developments in order to protect the natural ecosystem. Of course, there are beautiful beaches, but one of the main reasons tourists visit the island is because of the ideal place to go whale shark watching. It's also unusual in that vehicles aren't allowed to access the island, so you'll rarely ever see a car, with residents instead using golf carts and mopeds for transportation. This not only reduces the damage to the environment, but also prevents sand from being accidentally transported from the beaches and deposited on the roads. It's at night that Holbox truly becomes a stunning and wondrous place though, because on the western edge of the island you'll find the Punta Cocos Lagoon, which, if you're there at the right time of year, you'll be treated to a fantastic display of bioluminescence by the algae that live in the water.
We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button.
Number 8. Nimba Island, Tanzania. When tourists learn of a new, spectacular place to visit, it's often not long until countless resorts have been built and fundamentally changed the feel of the place. But luckily, this hasn't happened to Nimba Island, which remains privately owned and only has 10 villas available to visitors. The island itself is part of the Zanzibar Archipelago, which is off the coast of Tanzania, and it's almost perfectly triangular in shape. It's small, though, with a circumference of less than a mile, but size isn't everything. Nimba has a lush casuarina pine forest, and it's surrounded by soft white beaches. That might be beautiful enough, but beneath the encompassing waters there's a further treasure, one of the most pristine coral reefs in the world. With more than 600 species of reef fish, 3 species of dolphin, whale sharks, humpback whales, turtles, and plenty more, it's perhaps no surprise that the entire island and region has been designated a marine conservation area. Depending on the time of year you visit, you may see turtles laying their eggs on the beaches, migratory birds passing through, and large pods of whales, and all in relative privacy. Only guests of the island's one resort are allowed to set foot on it, and there's even a patrolled 650-foot exclusion zone around the island that non-guests aren't permitted to get within. Number 7. Cape Breton Island, Canada. Islands don't have to be soaked in sun and have endless white sandy beaches to be beautiful, and Cape Breton Island in Canada is one of the best examples of this. It's a part of Nova Scotia and is huge, measuring 3,981 square miles, which makes up 18.7% of the total landmass of the province. It's separated from the mainland by the Strait of Canso, but it's possible to access by foot thanks to the 4,500-foot-long rock-filled Canso Causeway that connects it. Even though there are around 130,000 permanent residents, the island is exactly what you'd expect of secluded, rugged Canadian terrain, and it's hard to look in any direction without being in awe of the vista. There are rocky shores, glacial valleys, mountains, and vast woods, as well as the Bredor Lake system, which is a fjord towards the island's center, along with the freshwater Lake Ainslie, and a vast river system. Geological evidence shows the landmass was once connected to Scotland and Norway, and you could easily believe you were in either of those countries when you're there. With a mild climate, it's not a place you'll be topping up your tan, but it's ideal for those wanting to explore, with countless hiking trails. Perhaps the best way to see the island is the Cabot Trail, which is a 185-mile loop around Cape Breton Island, and it's said to be one of the most scenic driving routes in all of Canada. Number 6. St. Barts. St. Barthélemy is the Caribbean island most associated with luxury and excess, but if you venture beyond the comfort of the 5-star hotels, you'll find yourself surrounded with stunning scenery and realize there's far more to the place than it initially appears. It's a French territory that's in the northeastern Caribbean, and it's part of the Leeward Islands along with Saint Martin, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. It covers an area of just 9.7 square miles and has a permanent population of around 10,000 people, most of whom live in the capital city, Gustavia. Formed millions of years ago by volcanic activity, it's completely surrounded by shallow coral reefs that make for some of the best diving and snorkeling in the Caribbean. The volcanic roots can be seen inland too, from the rock that was used to build most of the buildings in Gustavia to Mondovité, the highest point of the island, and the dense jungle that surrounds it. If glorious beaches are your thing, then St. Barts has plenty of them, but it's also an island paradise for those wanting to explore and have the chance to see a wide range of animal and plant life. There's a number of endemic species to the islands that have evolved independently of other places, such as sea grape trees, royal palms, and the night-blooming cereus. And you're almost guaranteed to see a wide variety of birds, such as magnificent frigate birds, hummingbirds, snowy egrets, and belted kingfishers. Of course, with the reefs come an incredible aquatic ecosystem too, with permanent communities of dolphins, whales, various turtle species, and hundreds of types of fish. Number 5. Cebu, Philippines. Cebu is a large island in the central Philippines that, along with the 167 smaller surrounding islands, makes up the province of Cebu. Its capital city was the first capital of the Philippines and remains the second largest urban area in the country. But with an area of 1,700 square miles, there's far more to see there than human development. The island is 122 miles long and 20 miles across at its widest, but throughout this is virtually every type of terrain you could expect, from beautiful sandy beaches to rolling hills, a mountain range, rocky coastline, and limestone plateaus. The northern coast of the island is particularly popular with tourists, with more than 2 million visiting in a normal year to relax on the beaches and dive in the water. But no matter where you are on the island, you won't be far from something spectacular. Near the southwest coast, for example, is a 3-layered waterfall called Kawasan Falls, which is one of the most incredible formations you'll see anywhere on Earth. Despite being busy throughout most of the year, you'll always be able to find a secluded spot there, and all your troubles will simply drift away. Number 4. Kofanan, Thailand. It would be difficult to find a single island in Thailand that didn't make you gasp as you first arrived at it, but by far the one that stands out the most is Kofanan. Located in the Gulf of Thailand to the south of the country, its name partly means sandbar because of the presence of the number of sandbars off the island's coast. Covering an area of 48 square miles, evidence has been found that people have lived on the island for at least 2,000 years, which is no surprise when you see how beautiful it is. Surrounded by incredible beaches, Kofanan was the site of The Beach in Alex Garland's 1996 novel, although it wasn't used as the filming location for the movie. The interior of the island is covered in vegetation and mountains, though, which are largely inaccessible and means that most people live around the periphery. This makes for awe-inspiring sightseeing opportunities if you're willing to trek through the undergrowth, and you'll be bound to see a wide range of different flora and fauna. In many ways, there's something on Kofanan for everyone. Exploration in the jungle, relaxation on the beaches, and some of the greatest dive spots in the world. If the party scene is more your thing, then the island has you covered there too, because once a month they hold the best beach party on the planet, known as the Full Moon Party. It's held on the half-mile-long Hadrin Nok Beach and sees 30,000 revelers descend on the island for the festivities. Number 3. Basaruto Archipelago, Mozambique. Off the coast of Mozambique, there's a group of 6 islands that are called the Basaruto Archipelago, and they're some of the most stunning you'll see anywhere in the world. Unusually, the islands were all formed by sand that was deposited by the Save River, which because of human development has since changed course, so no longer adds to them, but they continue to grow thanks to material that's left behind by the south-flowing Mozambique Current. Known as the Pearl of the Indian Ocean, the islands have been built down the same way as many others and still only have a few resorts between them. They largely remain undeveloped as a result, and this means they're one of the best places to visit to see animal species that are particularly affected by human activity. In the waters surrounding the islands, there's one of the world's largest populations of dugong, and there are also countless turtles, rays, and other endangered species. The islands and the waters around them were declared a national park in the early 1970s, which further protects all of the flora and fauna, and hopefully will allow communities to fully establish themselves without the risk of being hunted. This does too mean there are animals that you wouldn't necessarily want to encounter, and one of the earliest records of the archipelago was believed to be an 11th century Egyptian book called the Book of Curiosities of the Science and Marvels for the Eyes, in which it details islands along the coast and mentions one called Crocodile. The Basaruto Archipelago is in the right place along the coast to be the one that's mentioned, and it also has a huge native population of crocodiles. Hvar, Croatia. With more than 2,800 hours of sunshine each year, the Croatian island of Hvar is one of the most beautiful places to visit in the Adriatic Sea, but there's far more to it than the long sandy beaches and turquoise water that it's best known for. Located off the Dalmatian coast, the island is just over 42 miles long, but is unusually hilly. With a number of freshwater springs, it's covered in natural pine forests and farmland that's used for olive groves, fruit orchards, lavender fields, and vineyards. Because of the island's position in the Adriatic, it has long been an important strategic outpost, with the ancient Greeks founding a colony there in 384 BC. They were the ones who invented the system of land use on the island for agriculture, something that's known as the Starigrad Plain, and it's still in use to this day. Whether it be exploring ancient ruins, taking in the majesty of the fields upon fields of lavender, or relaxing on the beaches, Hvar truly does have something for everyone. and should be on every self-respecting traveler's bucket list. Number 1. Capri, Italy. The islands around Italy all have a rich history thanks to the ancient Greeks and Romans who built outposts on the vast majority of them, but there was one that people have always known was special, even thousands of years ago: Capri. It's on the southern part of the Gulf of Naples and has been inhabited since prehistory. The earliest recorded settlement of the island was by the Greeks, who themselves found archaeological evidence of previous societies that are thought to date back to the Neolithic and Bronze Ages. It was the first emperor of Rome, Caesar Augustus, who began the first major development on Capri, with the construction of a villa on the island. He believed the place had a deep spiritual connection and was convinced that it was a godly place because of how beautiful it was. The waters are a perfect deep blue, the beaches are some of the best in the region, and the rolling landscape feels like the gods crafted it themselves. Even the towns and buildings have been built in a way that only seems to accentuate the rustic charm of the island, in a way that still to this day makes it one of the most popular ones in Italy. Possibly the most spectacular feature of Capri, though, is the Blue Grotto. Here, sunlight passes through an underwater opening into a sea cave and illuminates it with a blue reflection from the water. It was once the personal private swimming hole of Roman Emperor Tiberius, and remnants of statues have been found in the depths, suggesting it was regarded as so perfect that the Romans turned it into a shrine.
Watch our nature playlist for more top 15 videos about beautiful nature. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best nature videos.